This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. We'll start tonight by asking if there's any questions as far as the quiz for tomorrow goes. All right. So we're going to continue on. After tonight, we'll have covered all words appearing more than 200 times in the New Testament. That's a pretty good chunk. We're going to run into a few kind of interesting words tonight where there might be some points of discussion to figure out exactly what some of these things mean. All right. Who wants to start us off? Don't everybody jump at once.
No. Oh. I know.
Is that T or Tay? With many other words, he gave them warning and pleaded with them, saying, "Escape from this corrupt generation." Is not the verse saying, "and" with many other words?
Yeah, so it's te.
Tad.
Ted. Ted.
Is a good Another way to translate this is so. The meaning is just a little bit different than what Kai means. It's more of you guys know what an inclusio is? Does anybody know what an inclusio is? So it's a statement that.
Include in it?
What's that?
It looks like it starts like include.
Yeah, it's sort of. It's a statement that usually you'll state it at the front and the end of it, and it's supposed to draw everything. It's kind of like tying a bow on something. So whenever this particular form of and is used, it's usually in a summary statement. Anybody know where this comes from?
John the Baptist?
No. Good guess. This is from Acts 2:40. So after Acts 2:38, which is kind of how Peter finishes the sermon, there's this kind of after statement that sort of summarizes what Peter had to say, and that's kind of how it acts. And that's usually when this word is used, is whenever it's wrapping something up. It's not exclusively used that way. I've also heard some people say it can mean yet. That's not a word we use a lot in English, but it kind of gets an idea of the connotation where it's more than just this and this and this and this. It sort of begins the last sentence. So, so based upon this, it's that sort of idea. All right. Who wants to take this one?
I will.
Okay.
Is it Dunamai?
Yep.
When he had gone into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that Dunamai to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord."
Any guesses on that one?
I am. I'm not sure.
Okay. I will give you I am. That is correct.
Able. I am able.
Yeah. So, all right. Time for me to climb up on my soapbox. Does anybody know what an anachronism is? All right. So, chron means time. And this is almost like saying not twice. An anachronism is whenever you apply something from one time period and use it on another. So there's a similar word to dunamai that you guys might have heard before. Any guesses? Woodbury Group?
We're
I
thinking,
just heard Dunamai. I don't know what I was looking for. Dunamai?
Ever heard dunamis?
we're looking at it pretty hard.
Dunamis? You ever heard dunamis before?
Dunamis. Yeah, we've heard it.
What does dunamis? Okay. Dunamis is the word for power. Okay. So dunamai can also mean I am powerful. But we get a word from dunamis. Anybody know what that is?
Dynamite.
Dynamite. Okay. I have heard in sermons people say, whenever it says the gospel is powerful or the word of truth is powerful, they say it is literally the dynamite. That is an example of an anachronism. Why is that?
Because they didn't have dynamite back then.
Exactly. And to make that application, first off, makes you sound dumb. Second off, it misrepresents the text. So, I've heard people say a little bit of Greek is dangerous. I think there's some truth to that, especially when you don't even understand what the words came from. Because whenever you read something back into it, that is still eisegesis. It's just a different type. It's based upon time period instead of based upon what the text says. That's my soapbox. When we get to ecclesia, I have another one. All right. Let's have somebody from Woodbury read this one.
Wait a minute, go.
So Herodias was nursing a grudge against him and they go to kill him, but she was not able to do
That's
it.
so. This is a G in
Oh,
Hebrew.
fellow,
Yeah.
So what?
So fellow. It's an
Is it
L in Greek.
yeah, fellow,
Pharaoh.
plotted or sought to kill him.
Thought wouldn't be a bad one. That's not usually what this word means, but in this context, that would be correct.
Did they
Can't
set
think of a
out
way.
to kill him?
No, this is
Plan.
I want or I wish. Okay, so wanted, willed. I guess it's another one. Willed. There's a lot of derivatives of this word, but most of the time it means something along the lines of I want. That's the noun form of the same thing. So this is like a wish, a desire, something like that. Okay. Victoria, you want to do this one?
Pray then, Huthos, this. Our Father in heaven, may your name be revered. Pray then like this.
Yeah, like is probably the best way in English. I think if you look at how it's technically in this manner, but we usually don't say it that way. And it can be used other ways besides just comparing two things or talking about how you do something. So most of the time, like is going to be the best way to render this. It can also be as. Okay. Blake, you want to do this one?
Did you say me, Quentin?
Yeah. Go ahead and go.
Idu.
Yep.
Then he said to his disciple, Idu, your mother. And from that hour the disciple took her into his own home. Behold or see or
Yeah. Something along those lines. Look, behold. This may or may not help you, but the way I originally memorized this, it kind of looks like if you got to use a little bit of imagination, but you look at a video. There's a virtual equivalent to this, which is ide, which means basically the same thing. It's this interjection that means look at something. So it is a second person imperative, and it always carries with it a connotation of excitement or, I don't know, feeling. Every time I've ever seen it rendered in like a note card or something like that, it always has the exclamation point. So look, behold is probably going to sound more Bible-y if you're trying to sell copies. Yeah, look, your mother doesn't sound quite as KJV-ish as behold. Fix this too. There we go. Now it's better. Okay. Let's see. Anyone in the Broast house want to do this one?
I guess I
And
will.
I don't think this came across, but I'm pretty sure this is a smooth breathing.
And above it said they put the charge against them, which read, "This is Jesus, King of the Laodicea."
It's an I. The
What?
capital.
Oh, it's a
The
capital.
capital Yoda.
Oh,
Capital E.
Iosa. Iosa.
We'll break it down. So Yoda makes a what sound?
I.
What, like a short I. So it's
Yeah.
make the sound. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and then Omicron Upsilon. What kind of sound is that?
Ooh.
Ooh. Okay.
Ooh.
Okay.
And that's a D.
Okay. So what does this sound? Remember, this is a diphthong. So alpha iota is,
It's a long I.
yep, long I. So we get something like die.
And then
Put it all together. This is
Iotas. Iotas. Idosa.
so I'll say it and then you repeat it, okay? Iudaios.
Iudaias.
Iudaios.
Iudaias.
It's not an easy one. Any guess what Iudaios means?
King of the Jews.
Yeah. So it's kind of a funny word. It is somewhat indeclinable. So it can be an adjective. It can describe somebody who's Jewish, or if you use it as a noun, it can mean someone who is a Jew. So it can be either Jewish or a Jew / Jew, depending on the context. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Ralphie has spoken. That means we can move on. Let's see. Victoria, you want to do this one?
Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will eis erchomai, the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. Well, I know that means enter there. It's
Yep.
kind of like go out, go in. I mean, in, go out.
So, erchomai doesn't mean go out. Ex erchomai means to go out. Okay? Erchomai just means to come or go. So with this one, we added ek, which means from or out of. With eis erchomai, eis means
In,
did I say it?
in,
In, into, or for. Usually this is what we think of. So eis erchomai would be to go in. Enter is probably how we would say that, but if you want to break it down into its parts, erchomai means go or come, depending on the context. Eis means into. So eis erchomai means to go into. Does that make sense?
yep. I was putting the wrong ending on it, so it kind of canceled itself out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's. Hey, is Charlotte there? Yes, no. Is she there and hiding? That's a better question.
Yeah, she's here, but she doesn't have her mic on.
So
Mic
this
doesn't
is
work.
she said James is her favorite book. This is my favorite verse from James, and I think she should read it. Okay.
She's
She
coming.
doesn't have to play along. Oh, she is?
She's
Okay.
coming.
Well, I can't see it on this screen. I'm sorry, Quentin. I don't have a mic that works on the other thing.
That's okay.
And the screen is too small. But the person who looks intently to the perfect Namas.
Get those away from each other. Get that back from
Is
there.
it?
Yeah, it's Namas.
Bring the one you can hear into this room.
Namas that provides liberty and continues to not having become a forgetful hearer, but an active doer. He will be blessed in his deed.
Okay. What do you think Namas means?
Well, I'm going to let her.
She says heart.
I couldn't hear it. Not quite.
Now she said word.
But depending on how you're using that, that would be correct. Yeah, it's usually rendered law. So I was doing an interesting word study this weekend for something different, but I did run into something I found kind of interesting. So Namas is usually the Greek rendering of what Hebrew word? Woodbury? I would think you guys have learned this Hebrew word.
Say,
Is it the Shema?
No, the Shema is thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul. That's the Shema.
I thought that was the law you were looking. Sorry.
What is the word? What is the Hebrew word for law? That's what I'm asking. What's another name for the first 5 books of the Bible?
Torah.
So here's something I found out. So these are usually translated. The Septuagint translated Torah as Namas. In Greek, this definitely means a law code. But the word Torah doesn't really mean law in the same way that we think of, because we think of law as a rule. The Torah was more intended to be a teaching. So it was the teachings of Moses, or the prescripts of Moses, or something like that. And whenever you read the Pentateuch, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, they would all be Torah in the sense that they're all teachings of Moses, but they're not all necessarily law in the way that we think of laws. Leviticus, we definitely would think of as laws in the way we think of laws. But I found that kind of the reason we call it the law of Moses is because of the influence of the Septuagint, not the other way around, which I found something I had never come across before. If anybody wants to read more about that, that's in the hermeneutical spiral on the chapter on interpreting law. Okay. One of my favorite verses in Greek. Let's have somebody from Woodbury read this one.
I would answer, what have I
What I have.
grathol, I have grathol. What I have written, I have written. And that means graphol, which is where we get the word grammar from,
Or.
graffiti.
Graph.
Yeah.
Yeah, writing. So this is the verb form. So this is I write. But like I said, this is one of my favorite verses, and I really like how it's phrased. Apokrythe ha pilatas ha gegrapha. So this is a neat phrase. Anybody know what tense this is in? So I'll take you through this. Pilatos. What do you think that means?
Pilate.
Pilot. Apokrythe. You guess on apokrythe?
Answered. Said.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the imperfect from what word we've learned. Which word we've learned?
Apocryphomai or something. I don't remember.
I don't know. But yeah. Okay. So you don't need to know this yet, but if you ever see the first letter repeated with an epsilon, this is indicative of the perfect tense. Oh, I forgot to do with an accent. What or which? So what Pilate says here, we add the word I have written. We add I so it makes more sense. It really would be better rendered as that which has been written has been written. And it invokes this idea of permanency, which we don't necessarily get in English. Now, I mentioned this last time we were together. What is the significance of the perfect tense? So it's a past action with present implications. In this particular case, it becomes, okay, is the present implication when Pilate is talking, or is the present implication when we as the reader revisit it? It's kind of a neat thought. But the fact that Pilate wrote the King of the Jews still has effect on us today, which is what the thrust of this passage is. I like, this is very kind of pithy the way that Pilate said this to the people who told him to change it. All right. Jake, you want to do another one?
Sure. Kathos.
Yep.
Be compassionate. Kathos, your Father is compassionate.
Any guess on that one?
I'm drawing a blank on this one.
This is a little bit funny. I don't know if we have a word in English that conveys this idea exactly, but if you were to pick one word, it would be as. But usually it's rendered as just as or even as. So it's this idea of connecting these two. So how am I supposed to be compassionate? To the same degree that my Father is compassionate. Make sense? So it's supposed to act kind of like an equal sign. That's a little bit, because I can show several examples where that doesn't work. That's a little bit of a simplification, but if you think about it as that, where it's an equal sign that whatever's on here is supposed to have some sort of idea for the condition of the second one, it gets you the idea. All right. Let's, well, I can read this one. Men, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. Anyone want to take a guess what this word means?
Do you want,
What's that?
like, therefore, or also, some kind of
Okay.
joining something?
I'm going to write down everything people say. Therefore, you said also?
Yes. Kind of like it's
Okay.
joining.
How about just as?
Just-
Or just also, in lieu of, whatever. If you want to write down everything.
Is it in lieu of? Is that how you say that?
I like that.
I don't,
It's also.
I'm going to, because this is actually,
That's
this is
not
weirdly right.
I like
Yeah, how do you spell
Biblically words.
it? L-
You say Bible words,
It's
bibliology?
I-U or E-I-U, one of the two.
Yeah, it's,
Lieu.
yeah, L-I-E-U.
That sounds Bible-y to me.
Bible-y. I love it.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Anybody else?
And Jesus.
Now there.
Now therefore.
Was that
Here we go.
now? Somebody said, Glenn, was it you that said now?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, this is the end of the Gospel of John.
correct. That's where this came from.
And this is like where he summarizes the whole thing. He says, I told
Right.
you all this. If we were to
Yeah.
do this.
Right. And I'm going to come back to why this is weirdly closer than what you would think, but we would never say that in English. Anybody else have any guesses for this one? Okay. So I'll tell you the most common way this word is used is you'll have something like this, and then you'll have it again. So it'll start off a phrase with men, and then there'll be another phrase with men. And in this construction, it means on the one hand, and then the second one is, but on the other hand. In those cases, it's pretty easy to figure out. You just kind of insert this sort of thing, and that one works pretty well. The problem is, how do you convey this idea without this idea whenever it's by itself? So I've seen different ways to do it. Now, I believe is what most of the modern translations have adopted. I will tell you that if you read like some people who are trying to be very, very literal, sometimes they'll put indeed, which is pretty good. But if you kind of think of it, this is a way of expressing one side of this idea. So this isn't necessarily a bad way to think about it. I will tell you that I looked through this passage in several different versions, and I actually had the list of all the times men was used in the New Testament, and somewhere along the lines of 85% of the time, whenever it's used by itself, it's just not translated. It's just kind of left out because it is so hard to convey this idea. And it really is just kind of like an intensifier. For the purpose of the test, either indeed or on the one hand will work for me. Everybody got that? Any other comments or questions on that one? I was actually involved with about 35-minute discussion on how exactly to render men in this verse, because every translation that I've seen comes up just a little bit short at conveying that. Glenn really kind of hit the nail on the head of it's supposed to draw things to a conclusion. That's really what these two verses are about. So you need some aspect to convey that. I think indeed is probably the best way to render it in this particular context, but I can tell you it doesn't always work. And you end up with some really weird sentences if you try to hold exactly one way to translate this particular one. Okay. Let me see. Let's have somebody from ISB do this one. Woodbury ISB.
Yes.
But the EI be the diphthong that's made.
Car. Car is
Char.
Is it car?
So.
Go ahead, you do
Char.
Put it on, right.
it. Jen's gonna do it.
Reading the whole thing up. But when the crowd had been removed, Jesus went in and took her by the chair, and the girl arose.
What?
Any idea what care means?
With the hand.
Hand. So
So is it chair?
You pronounced it like a chair, like we sit in a chair,
Chair.
right?
Well, I'll show you where it comes. I'll show you something, okay? Let's do it this way.
Oh, I know where we're going with this.
How would you say that?
Lepto maniac.
Chair, chero,
Chiropractor.
Cheryl,
Chiropractor.
yeah, chiropractor.
chiropractor.
Yeah.
How does a chiropractor help someone? What do they do?
What?
They use
Using
their
their
Hands.
manipulation.
Yeah.
yes.
Cure.
So the transliteration would be something like this. But you got to remember that this CH is like the CH in Bach, not the CH like in chair. Chir. All right, just a few more. Victoria, you want to do this one? Another one of my favorite Greek words.
And when he Urisco, one pearl of great value, he went away and sold all that he had and bought it. Found?
Found. So I find. Okay.
Can you pronounce that?
Heurisco. What does this mean?
I discovered something.
Yes. So we get Eureka from Heurisco. Now, why we don't have the H, I'm not exactly sure, but it does have the rough breathing. Heurisco. How many more? I got a couple more. I'll read these. And the Achlas were astonished and were saying, could this be the son of David? What do you guys think Achlas means?
People or crowd?
Crowd is we usually use crowd for this particular word. Okay? It can mean people, but usually we say crowd because we have another word for people. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to hamartia. And hamartia, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. Anybody want to guess what this is?
Sin.
Sin. So you can remember this by remembering. To the Jews, Ham was sinful.
Ha ha.
Ham. There's a couple different words for sin used in the New Testament. This is far and away the most common one. I think it's used more than like 10 times the next most common one. And it's the one that we have probably heard most common. The phrase to describe it is missing the mark. Let's see if I think that's the last one. Yeah. So the other words for sin have different connotations. What's another word for sin? We'll just talk about a few of them. There's one other main one, and the reason I think about it is because it's in Ephesians chapter 2. It's kind of the it uses sins and this other word together. Anybody know what I'm talking about from Ephesians chapter 2? And you were lost in your sins and your
Transgressions.
transgressions is the same word. Trespasses is how I think. Yeah. Trespass, I think, is how the newer versions translate it. Transgression is the transgression. Now that I think about it, is a pretty good, almost transliteration as to what it means. So, if you hamartia, that means that whenever you have something that you were intended to do, you didn't do it. A transgression or a trespass usually has the connotation that you blatantly disregarded what the law had to say. Most of the time, these are used interchangeably in the New Testament, but it seems like, especially Paul, when he uses them together, it's more than him just repeating himself, that he's talking about something that's a little bit broader than just two different things, two different ways to say the same thing, that he's trying to add this kind of inclusive type idea to whatever he's trying to say. Any questions about the words that we have tonight? Any questions over any of the material we've covered so far?
I have a question. You were telling me we weren't going to have the class over the summertime. How long is the class going to last?
It will go through the second week of May.
Okay.
And on that note, I was talking to Victoria about, I've got this new book that I'm really interested to teach through that I could cover in the summer if people were interested. It requires you to have access to Logos or an equivalent program on the computer. And if enough people were interested, I could show you how to set that up. But it would be, and this is the way I'm viewing it, is it would be a way for 3 or 4 people, more if people were interested, but my thoughts are if I could have 3 or 4 people already a little bit ahead and have some idea of what we're talking about before we actually cover the class in the fall, that they can act as tutors for the people who are a little bit more confused. If somebody would like to do that, let me know. Nobody has to do it. I just thought it might be something that some people wanted to do. And the other thing is like I said, I'd like to study this book more because it's a very different way to learn the language than the way that has traditionally been taught. And I would like to see the effectiveness of it, because it might be something that in the future, if we ever do this again, that I might try instead. Okay?
What was the name of
Any
that?
other questions? I got a copy of it here. Give me a second.
And what's different about it? Is it like more inductive or something?
So it's called Biblical Greek Made Simple. All the basics in one semester. The main difference between it and the way things have been taught before is it relies heavily on the digital resources that are available now. In the past, you more or less had to memorize a lot of parsing lists. You had to memorize a lot of vocabulary. You had to memorize lots of parts of speech and that sort of thing. Now with Bible software, it does a lot of the parsing and other things for you. So you don't have to have as strong of a base of memorization. You just kind of have to have a base as far as knowing what the information it's giving you means and how to use it. So this gentleman named Daniel Zacharias, he put together a book that integrates the Logos program and its ability to parse words and tell you the definition with some simple understanding of the grammar to accelerate how you learn it. Now, the thing is, the book's only been out for about 8 months, so I don't know if it's good or not. And I don't know if this method works, but I am interested to learn if it does. Let me see here. This is it. Any other questions?